The following show is a Pod Avenue production. You are cordially invited to have dinner with the King. Pull up a chair and join WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler and Glenn Moore. Enjoy.
Jerry, here we are back at King Jerry Lawler's Memphis Barbecue Company, and we have a couple new items on the menu, and I'm going to try one here, the Sauce Squatch, and I'm looking to have two of these, but this one is huge. I don't know if I can handle it.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no way even you can't eat two Sauce Squatches.
I want to try.
Look at how big that thing is. That not awesome?
And it's a saucy. They got sauce all over my hands. I love it.
Oh, this is going to be a fun episode. I can tell already.
I got barbecue stains all over the mic. The mic all over is all sticky, and
the people that are listening out there have no idea how much. Well, I don't know. It is to me, at least to me. It's fun to watch you eat. Maybe fun eat would be the better word, to watch you eat. You just dig right in there. You don't care how much sauce you have on your face, your chin, your shirt. Look at that all over. You got it on your shirt, and you haven't even taken a bite yet.
Oh,
how'd you do that?
You got any bibs here? You got to invest.
This is not a lobster restaurant. We don't put a bib on anybody.
Need a special Glenn Moore bib, extra large, please.
Yes, we may need that. You're right.
But no, you have definitely a couple of two different meals here, Jerry.
Yeah, and as you can see, I'm taking we have a quarter of a barbecued chicken leg and chicken thigh here. This is becoming my new favorite. But it's look, don't laugh at me, because this is one of those things you gotta eat this with your hands. So I may be getting a little barbecue sauce all over the place myself.
That's all right. You're not as bad as me, but you're almost there. You're almost there. All right. Let's get into the show. Before we get into our topic now, we're going to take a break from our Andy Kaufman series and do a question and answer episode. Now, we have a ton of emails.
Glenn, I know you told me this a few minutes ago, but don't you think this is going to make a lot of people upset, a little angry? Because I've been getting some amazing feedback, some great response to the Andy Kaufman, talking about all the Andy Kaufman feud that we had and everything. So we're just make sure everybody understands that we're not finished with that.
No,
we're going to keep. We got more on the Andy Kaufman. We got to get to the Letterman, what went on behind the scenes with the David Letterman show and all that sort of stuff. So we're not finished with Andy.
No, definitely not. We have plenty of episodes coming with the Andy Kaufman series. We just wanted to take a break because our email inbox has been overflooding with questions, even for when we started the show. Questions after questions. So we're going to get to those. Some Twitter questions. So this is going to be a Q&A episode. We're not going to answer every single question, but we're going to do about a half an hour and get those questions answered. And if you have a question for Jerry for a future episode, dinnerwiththeking@podavenue.com is the email. You can go to podavenue.com/king for the email if you want to email Jerry a question for the show. We'll read it. We'll make sure to say your name and where you're from as well. Before we get to that, Jerry, you were going viral over the weekend. Jerry Lawler going viral with your Memphis Grizzlies appearance, and you and Buff Bagwell tearing down the house, literally.
Yeah, well, you're right. In the past with the Memphis Grizzlies basketball team here in Memphis, I've done some different appearances, and they have a guy that's in charge of the all of the extra entertainment that they do, and most people don't realize how much goes into the extra entertainment that's added to an NBA game, especially here in Memphis. I mean, there are bands there. They've got this one group of, it's like grandparents, this big group of grandparents that come out on the court and they play this rock song or whatever. This group of grandparents do this. They're out there twerking. They're doing all of this dancing and everything during one of the timeouts, and they just put forth all sorts of entertainment during the timeouts and the rest periods and all that sort of stuff during the NBA games. And in the past, I have had several appearances there that would include, trying to get the Memphis crowd fired up. And in the past, we've hit some of the opposing team's fans with with metal folding chairs. I even pile drived a guy on the court one time in the middle of the basketball court during a game. So this particular game, it was Game 6 of the playoff series with the San Antonio Spurs, and they had this idea to have Buff Bagwell. It turned out to be Buff Bagwell. I think originally they had looked for Scott Steiner, but then there was some sort of scheduling conflict. But they got a hold of Buff Bagwell, and during the second quarter, they had Buff Bagwell sitting right there courtside along with a friend of his, and Buff, the guy that interviews people, which is Dustin Starr, one of our wrestlers from here in the Memphis area. He also works as one of the floor guys there with the Memphis Grizzlies, where he goes around and interviews people during the game. He walks over to Buff Bagwell during a timeout, gets him to stand up, and he said, "Look at this, folks! You never know who you're going to see at the Memphis Grizzlies games. Here's Buff Bagwell, former WCW star." And so Buff then goes on this big tirade. He said, "Look, I'm not here to support Memphis basketball. I'm here to see Memphis get closed out. I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan, and Memphis sucks, and everything about this city sucks." And of course, we have over 18,000 people sold out there at the FedEx Forum, and they start booing. And as he's on his anti-Memphis tirade, my music hits. Out I come. I have my own special little Grizzlies jersey and outfit and wrestling tights with the crowns down the side and the Grizzlies colors, and I got on my Grizzly colored crown. So I come out and confront Buff Bagwell, get in his face and tell him, it's the cool thing about Memphis, with everybody got a towel as they go in, and Memphis, of course, is referred to as the Bluff City, and on our towels that everybody waves during the game, it says "We don't bluff." And so anyway, I close my comments to Buff Bagwell out by saying, hey, this is Memphis, Tennessee. This is one of the greatest basketball cities in America. And as you can see from the towels, we don't bluff, and we damn sure don't buff. So get out of here, So then I turned her to his buddy who was with him, and I started going off on this guy. And in the meantime, Buff reaches over and gets a metal folding chair and blasts me in the back and knocked me down. And the two of them kind of leave laying there as the timeout ends. And the Super Grizz, the Memphis mascot, comes out, and they kind of help me up off the floor. The first time that I'd ever been left in a precarious situation during one of those appearances, and so Buff got the best of me at that first time out. So they take me to the back. The game continues to go through halftime. Then we get to the third quarter of the game, and one of the timeouts come up, and after halftime they move Buff and his friend from the courtside seats up to this really high stage area where sometimes they have a band set up, and we have actually set a ring up in the past up there and did a match at the one of the games. But it's a really high area in the FedEx Forum, but it's just a stage up there. And so they moved Buff and his buddy up to that stage and had them prominent seats sitting right there during the whole third quarter. And they kept, spotlighting them so the people would know what they were doing up there. And so then about towards the end of the third quarter, when a timeout arose, Buff Bagwell and his friend, they put the spotlight on them. They stand up again. They're posing. And so suddenly they play my music again. Up I come. And now here's the plan of this thing. I come up behind Buff as he hears my music. He's looking around and he's looking all over the place, and he's looking in the opposite direction. And I come up behind him, and I'm going to yell Buff. And when he turns around, I'm going to throw one of my infamous fireballs right in his face. A big, I had this thing all ready. I had it all pumped up, going to be this huge fireball I'm going to hit Buff Bagwell in the face with. Then his buddy, Buff Bagwell's then going to get hit with a fireball. He's just going to stop, drop, and roll and exit the area. Then I'm going to take his buddy, punch him a couple of times, and set him on a table, lay him out on a table. And then suddenly Super Grizz is going to appear on the level above us. I mean, like he's way up there. He's on a whole nother concourse, like above where we are. And he's going to come out to the edge of that. And I've got this guy laid out on a table. And Super Grizz is going to go no, give me 2 tables. So we got some other people to lift this one table up with the guy on it and put it on top of another table. And then Super Grizz is going to climb this like 18-foot ladder. It was insane. Super Grizz is going to climb this 18-foot ladder, dive off onto this guy, crash through the tables, and then, Super Grizz and I are going to stand there with our hands up, get the crowd all fired up. That was the plan. That was the way it was supposed to go down. What actually happened was this. When my music played, Buff Bagwell stands up. He's looking for me. I come up behind him, and I've got my whole, I've been standing waiting down underneath here. You can't time out when this timeout is going to happen. So you had to be ready for, maybe we were sitting down there ready to go for 6 or 7 minutes. So I've got this flammable substance in my hand, and I don't know if I started sweating or what happened. Anyway, I'm sitting there holding this stuff for this long period of time. My music plays. I go up, walking up the steps. Everybody sees me to cheer. Buff's looking the other way. I yell, Buff. He turns around. I ignite my fireball, and it just, instead of this huge fireball that I throw into Buff Bagwell's face, it just goes poof, and it just blows up in my own hand, just like this little, I don't know, it was like the most embarrassing thing ever. The little puff of fire lasted a minuscule, like half a second, and it never even got close to Buff Bagwell, and he's looking down at me, and I'm suddenly looking up at him, and so I just hauled off and punched him, and he goes down on the floor, and I start putting the boots to Buff, and he rolls over to where he was supposed to roll after he was set on fire, but then the other guy comes towards me. I give him a boot in the gut, nail him a couple times. I put him on the table. Then suddenly here comes the Grizz way up there, and he says, no, 2 tables. We set the other table up on top of that, and Grizz looks out at the crowd, throws his arms up in the air, dives off, and hits the guy. The tables don't break. They just fall over. It was really more scary than if they broke. It looked like they were going to fall off the edge of this 100-foot drop in the FedEx Forum. But neither of the tables broke. He hit the guy. The tables fell over. Grizz falls over. And I guess the good thing about it was, the fans, the 18,000 people there, didn't know what to expect. They didn't know what we were planning. So what they saw was what they got, and it was still good, because then Grizz got up, and the poor guy that didn't crash through the table that looked like it killed him, Grizz gets up, and he and I hold our hands up and get the people all fired up. And we were both really disappointed afterwards that it didn't go off as we planned, but it's still, for people watching there at the FedEx Forum, it was still entertaining and got the job done, got everybody fired up. However, to continue on with our disappointment that day, the Grizz wound up losing the game to the San Antonio Spurs and were closed out and shut out of the playoffs. And I told the guy, my friend that put this whole thing together, that this might not be a good night, because it was also the 30th anniversary of me losing. That's the very same night of me losing the Mid-South Coliseum to Tommy Rich and Austin Idol and getting my head shaved for the only time in my career. Oh. So, so it turned out to be it just was obviously a bad date in the Memphis wrestling history and in Jerry Lawler history for anything to do with Memphis wrestling.
Now, I was hoping it would be Scott Steiner. I know we talked about it on last week's show, because I love Scott Steiner. I love his promos. It's just off the wall. But if it was Scott Steiner, this could have been the battle of the restaurants, because he operates a Shoney's in Atlanta, and you have your Beale Street Bar and Grill, and you actually have your barbecue company, and the loser could have maybe cleaned the other one's restaurant. I mean, Steiner would have had to maybe clean your restaurant. No. Yeah.
Well, that might have been a good idea, but as it turned out, the way the whole thing fizzled out, I might have had to clean his restaurant.
Oh, nice.
That reminds me of a thing we did a long time ago in Memphis wrestling when Missy Hyatt was first getting together with Eddie Gilbert, and we did a thing where we had a match, and that was one of the stipulations that Missy Hyatt, if I beat Eddie Gilbert, Missy Hyatt had to come to my house and be my maid and servant and everything for an entire week. And so that was I wound up winning that match, and she came over. We did a big photo session, of her cleaning out my toilets and me just demanding the most ridiculous stuff ever for her to be my maid at my house. And it made Bill Apter put all the pictures in the national wrestling magazines at the time. And I don't know what that has to do with anything other than the fact that you brought up about cleaning somebody's restaurant. Look around you. What do you mean? Well, this place doesn't need to be clean. It's spotless. It's immaculate. What I don't know about Steiner Shoney's.
Yeah, I don't know either, but it's crazy to think Scott Steiner actually owns a restaurant. But hey, it's 2017. Really quick before we get our Q&As, we have some sad news because
Wait a minute. Before you get into that, you say it's crazy for Scott Steiner to own a restaurant. A lot of people might think it's crazy for Jerry Lawler to own a restaurant, but you know what? That's the cool thing about these. Of course, Shoney's is a franchise that I'm sure Scott has just purchased the franchise. Right. And hey, look at this. Jerry Lawler's Memphis Barbecue Company is available for franchises. We may have some listeners out there in some other parts of the country. We're already got a guy that's going to open one in Jacksonville, Florida. There may be somebody in California, somebody in Detroit, Michigan, Cleveland, Ohio, that are interested in opening a franchise. So these Jerry Lawler restaurants are available to franchise. You just go to our website and you can look up all the information. Really affordable, but I mean, I would only suggest this to someone who has restaurant experience or who knows something about the food business. I mean, I wouldn't just say anybody off the street to just open up a restaurant, because there's quite a bit involved in it. But the Jerry Lawler's Memphis Barbecue Company restaurant that you're eating right now, if somebody is interested in opening a franchise, they're available, and you could have a restaurant just like we have right here in Memphis in your own city.
You and I text a lot about the Browns and the Indians. I'm sorry, I'm getting choked up over all the sauce in my mouth. You and
Slow down a little bit.
You and I always talk, Cleveland sports. You're a big Browns Indians fan, and
yes,
a good friend of the show, a good friend. I'm still pissed about this, but the Browns released Gary Barnidge over the weekend during the draft. The Browns did draft a new tight end, but the Browns released Gary Barnidge. I'm still pretty pissed off about that. I'm sure you are too.
Well, of course. I mean, Gary was a great friend, a big wrestling fan, and one of the guys that I got to know and become actually friends with, hang out. He would come to WrestleMania. We always have him and his buddy D'Angelo Williams, who also D'Angelo got released as well, didn't he, from the Steelers? I
don't keep up with the Steelers, but
well, right. But anyway, D'Angelo is from here in Memphis, and and he and our friend Gary Barnidge were big wrestling buddies. And I mean, they would go to WrestleMania every year. We've had them at our after parties every year for the past few years. And yeah, to see Gary get released, especially because he's like, without a doubt, one of the best players on the entire team. It's like when I look at these moves they're making, it's here we go. We're starting over. We're rebuilding again. If you're a Cleveland Browns fan, which apparently there's getting to be less and less of us out there, but it's just tough to go through this. I mean, 2 years ago, Gary Barnidge is in the Pro Bowl, and then last year they had no quarterback to throw him the ball, so he's not going to have a Pro Bowl season like he did the year before, and all of a sudden he gets released. But Gary sent me a text and he said, "You got to love the business," and that's all it is. It's the business end of it. And I told him, I said, "Hey, it's just exactly like the wrestling business. They're the bottom. Everything's the bottom line. If you can hire somebody to do the same thing that you do for less money, boom, you're going to be gone." And that's just exactly, I think, is what's happening here with the Browns in this move. But Gary, there's no doubt Gary will land on his feet with some of the team, and he's a tremendous player, and I wish him all the luck in the world. As a matter of fact, I saw where he's such a wrestling fan. I think he went to one of the Impact Wrestling shows and actually got in the ring and body slammed somebody, didn't he? Yeah,
he was. I'm not sure if it's going to be on. I think it was on TV. It made the tape. They taped their episodes in advance, but yeah, he came in and I forget the wrestler he body slammed. One of the Wolves, the tag team, but he went in. he ran at Gary. Gary picked him up and then body slammed him. And
Yeah.
then D'Angelo was doing his best Stone Cold impression, where he got down on was barking in his face while the guy was down. And D'Angelo. Who would have thought you would have seen a former Steeler and a former Brown standing tall in the wrestling ring together?
Yes, exactly. My fiance Lauren sent Gary a text. She said, "It looks like you've already got your next career picked out." And he sent back and he said, "No way I'm going to put my body through that kind of pain." And I'm just thinking, I mean, here's an NFL football player concerned about the kind of pain he would put his body through in wrestling. But like I said, Gary's a great guy, just a really cool guy to hang out with. Big movie fan. That's one of the things he and I have in common. He's a big movie fan, and he's a big horror movie fan. I actually did a piece of artwork for him from an old movie, London After Midnight, a Lon Chaney character, and he's got it hanging on the wall in his house in Jacksonville, Florida. And he and I are both big horror movie fans, and we like to talk about that. And he does a thing during the season where he has people. I think he asks trivia questions, and they wind up getting to win a chance to go to a movie with Gary and that sort of stuff. So he's just a cool guy. He's a good guy. I wish him all the luck in the world. He'll be fine. You'll see him playing and being a star for somebody else next season.
All right, let's get to these questions. Now, like I said, if you want to ask Jerry a question, you can tweet at us at Dinner with King or email dinnerwiththeking@podavenue.com. And if we don't get to him this week, down the road, we'll do another Q&A. Now, this one just came in, and it's kind of timely because of what transpired this past weekend. And, Jerry, you were in San Jose for the Payback pay-per-view. And Mike in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, wants to know, what was your thoughts on the House of Horrors match between Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt?
Yes, that's appropriate. We were just talking about horror movies. And I said that. I even said that during the kickoff show to Renee Young about I was so looking forward to the House of Horrors match because I was such a big horror movie fan. I mean, I lived in a little town in Ohio where you could, back in the day when I was just a kid, you could still walk, to the movies or walk to school or that sort of thing. Those days are long since gone. Now it really does turn into a horror if you try to do something like that. But back in the day when our local movie theater would ever show a monster movie like Frankenstein or The Mummy or Dracula or Wolfman, those movies, I really looked forward to walking to the movie and walking home that night because you had from the downtown movie theater to my house, you had to walk down this little hill and of course on the sidewalk to the left was the street, and then to the right was this just little area where there was a creek running through there and just a wooded area sort of, and it was just really spooky and scary looking. So I don't know, from that point on I always loved to be scared. I loved horror movies. And speaking of that, I'm doing an appearance in September with one of the greatest horror movie stars of all time, the scariest movie ever made. And Gary and I talked about this at one time. What would you say, Glenn, is the scariest movie ever made?
Oh wow! Like I love a good horror movie.
Yeah.
And I don't think any movie is scary, but I think if you watch it for the first time, The Exorcist.
Yes, exactly. What do you mean you don't think any movie's scary? The Exorcist is the scariest.
I don't get scared that easily. I don't get scared. But as a kid watching The Exorcist for the first time, I was terrified.
Absolutely, it made an indelible impression on me that I've never forgotten. And I'm going to be making an appearance. It'll be the second time. I did an appearance with her once before with Linda Blair. She's going to be in Louisville, Kentucky, on Labor Day weekend, and she and I are going to be making an appearance together at a show in Louisville, Kentucky. And Linda Blair is just a delight to talk to about. She'll talk about anything, but of course, everybody wants to talk to her about making that movie and everything. So she signed a picture to me, and she does one of the greatest autographs. When she signs her picture, and of course I picked out. I said, "Look, I want one from one of the most unflattering pictures of her, but it's it's her when she's under the possession of the devil there in the movie, where she just looks so scary." But anyway, she signed the picture. She said, "To Jerry, you make my head spin." Linda Blair. So if you remember her head spinning around in that movie, so that's a great way that she signs her pictures. But anyway, back off the subject, back to the House of Horrors. I was, such a fan of those kinds of things. I was really, really excited about this. And, the WWE, man, they have the opportunity and they have the people that could put together some really great special effects. And so I guess my problem was I got my expectations up too high. I was expecting, like one of the things that I love to do every year here, that we have the Delta Fair in Memphis, and every year I can't wait to go to the House of Horrors. They always have one, the haunted house or the scary house. Either you walk through the thing at Halloween time, you walk through a haunted house somewhere where, people pop out and scare you half to death, or something to reach out and grab you or whatever, or the ones at the fair, you ride in a little carriage thing going through there, and it's all scary and things are, jumping out at you and that sort of stuff. And I guess I expected more scary stuff. And instead, what it was just Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton having a hell of a fight, and all of that stuff in a darkened house. And I just think that, to me at least, I was disappointed in the fact that there wasn't anything scary about it. It was like, I guess there was, maybe early on there was one thing that kind of where they looked like they tried to scare Randy, but it was just like there wasn't even anything that would have scared Randy in there. It just turned out to be a fight in a house, and they broke a lot of stuff, and that was all cool. It was, great fight, but I was just kind of disappointed in the fact that I expected there to be something more scary.
Yeah, they had like the baby dolls like hanging from the ceiling, like all weird, but
yeah, it didn't scare me.
Yeah, that doesn't scare me either.
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm not scared of baby dolls.
And then they had, of all things I picked was a refrigerator on Randy. Like, I mean, a fridge? Come on.
Well, I guess after you see somebody turn over an ambulance single-handedly, just dropping a refrigerator on somebody's just like, that's chopped liver, right?
I mean, you can tell the cut, the way they cut it. That Randy wasn't, it just. I think with the time they had to do it, I think I agree with you. Like, I think my expectations were a little bit higher, and
I mean, I like the match. I mean, I love those are two of my favorite WWE superstars right now, Randy and Bray Wyatt. And it never fails. These guys, are going to put on a heck of a match, and they did. And it was just, and I don't know. I guess if it hadn't been given the build-up that it was given, I would have said, "Oh my gosh, that was great! These two guys tore a house up, and they're fighting and fighting each other all through this dilapidated house." But after the scary build-up, I was just disappointed in that.
But how did Randy get back to the arena?
I don't know. How do I know? I was at the arena wondering why it's daylight here and it was dark at the match.
That's why I was going to ask you. Like, it's pitch black there, and it's still light out in California. I was like, what the heck? Now this is for people who want to keep kayfabe, the wrestling term, whatever. Now people have done their research, Jerry.
Kayfabe.
They have found the house.
Oh, really?
The internet. They found the house. Internet. It's for sale. It's in Missouri, so they filmed this in Missouri, and you can buy the house as is. This is, I think this is before Randy and Bray tore it up, but you can buy the house for $36,000 as is. Who would? I mean, I would love to own a house. Say a wrestling match took place here. Like, this is where a refrigerator fell on Randy, or this is where Bray was thrown through the wall.
I just saw on the internet where Marilyn Monroe's house, the house she died in, is for sale for $6.9 million. That's a little bit higher than the $36,000 you can get the Randy Orton House of Horrors for it. But are you sure? Now, see, you hear stuff like that on the internet, and that's one that I would have to question. For some reason.
No, they actually the website is official realtor website, and it's the actual house. That they compared what you saw on TV to what the pictures were, and it's the actual house.
Well, that is a good question. How did they get from a house in Missouri back to the arena in San Jose? That was like that was one of those new flying Uber cars or something, or whatever the heck was it.
But no, I know we're nitpicking, but I agree. The match was great. I enjoyed Randy and Bray and their whole program, because I like to have the horror, kind of the horror thing in wrestling. Mixing horror with wrestling, and not just having good guys versus bad guys and then fighting it out, but having that supernatural aspect to wrestling and bringing that in. And I think Bray has a perfect character for that. And I enjoyed it, but I think I'm with you. My expectations a little bit higher.
Yeah, that was my thought as well. It reminded me, one of the things that Terry Funk and I always wanted to do. Well, it was sort of a joint idea. We were talking about things to the way we could continue our rivalry over the years. And one of the things that we had come up with was we were going to try to find an old, dilapidated, rundown house in Memphis, and that had been condemned, so that nobody would care anything like what we wanted to do with it. And Terry said, I'll tell everybody on TV that I'm going to go over to your mother's house and find you, all this kind of stuff. And so that's not a good Terry Funk impersonation, but
no, definitely not.
Impression. That was not good at all. But anyway, Terry was going to tell the people that he was going to leave the studio and drive to my mother's house in Memphis, and because he said I'm sure that Lawler's at home with his mom, trying to hide from being here with me today, and so then of course the cameras would follow him in his car and drive up to this old dilapidated rundown house in this just a complete slum, and claim that was my mother's house, and then go up and knock on the door and say, Mrs. Lawler, I know he's in there, all this kind of stuff. And then then I would be inside, and we were going to have a fight and tear up the whole interior of the house. And that's as I was watching Bray and Randy, I was thinking, man, that's sort of what Terry Funk and I were wanting to do, but we never got around to actually doing it. And now after watching that, maybe I'm sort of glad that we didn't.
We're a half an hour in. We answered one question. We were to speed this up a little bit, Jer.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's your
fault.
No,
tell all the stories you want.
You ordered the sauce squatch.
I got two of them. I got the second one building right now. All right. Second question. This is from George Weekly. Doesn't say where he's from, but he wants to know your favorite issue of Superman, and who is your favorite artist depiction of Superman, and how do you feel about the modern Superman? So let's go with the favorite issue of Superman. Your favorite.
Oh my goodness.
Or story when it comes to Superman, issue or story.
Well, see, when I start talking about Superman, it's like I so date myself, and most of the people that are familiar with the technology that it takes to listen to a podcast, they're in the more modern era. The Superman of my era is way before them, and they probably won't even remember it. But to me, Superman will always be the George Reeves version that was on TV. Look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's Superman, and that's what I grew up with. That was my first impression or first introduction to Superman, and to me, just like I think most people are that way. Whatever is the first is the best, and that was the first Superman, and I've always clung to that as being my favorite of all time. I was sort of disappointed in the Christopher Reeves movies. I've actually been disappointed in all the DC movies, DC comic movies, the Supermans, and even the Batman's got a little better, but then I think they've sort of gone downhill. But I was not a huge fan of Christopher Reeve Superman. Then those movies just became sort of like a joke, and then even I'm really not a new fan of when they start changing history and they change the outfits that were iconic, like with the new Superman versus Batman. The Superman costume is so radically different from what Superman was intended, and the worst, oh my gosh, what they've done to Wonder Woman. That's terrible. It's the worst. I mean, I'm been a big Wonder Woman fan since the Linda Carter Wonder Woman TV shows back in the day, and then this whole new outfit, and I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of what they've done with the Superman. As far as I think, once Warner Brothers bought out DC Comics, that made the big difference there. But as far as and a Superman artist, Neil Adams, probably one of my favorites, who's still out there. I saw Neil at both the last two Comic Cons in Chicago and in Kansas City, and man, he's just an unbelievable Superman, and probably better known as a Batman artist, but he does Superman great as well. And then, but my all-time favorite, and he's passed away now, was Kurt Swan, and he was the guy who did the Superman as, when I was a kid growing up and collecting comics. One of my all-time favorite storylines was when Superman turned kind of bad and became the King of Earth. So there was a 2-issue set of Superman on the cover, Superman sitting on the throne with this huge crown on, and it was when Superman decided that, hey, look, I might as well take advantage of these superpowers that I have and add a little more power to my repertoire, and he became the King of Earth. And so that was one of my all-time favorite books. But that goes back a while. You have to do some research to find those storylines. But gosh, this past week of the past Comic-Con, you talk about my favorite Superman artist. Neil Adams was there. Also got a chance to meet and hang out with Jim Steranko, who was probably the greatest Captain America artist in comic books of all time. And I got to meet and sit and talk with he and his wife for a while, Basil Gogos. Now, that name probably means nothing to anybody, but I guarantee you everybody on Earth has seen this guy's work. Talking about House of Horrors. He did, for the old Famous Monsters magazine, he was the guy who did all the covers for the Famous Monster magazines, and of Frankenstein, of every monster you can think of, he's done a painting and cover of, and they're just so unique and such vibrant colors, all this kind of stuff. I mean, he's been one of my favorites for years and years. The guy's got to be, I guarantee he's in his 90s, but he's been around forever. But he's just he was just a great artist as well that I got to meet this past week in Kansas City. And what were we talking about? Superman? How do you let me get off the track and just ramble like this, Glenn? I'm sorry.
Jerry, you have so many stories in that memory of yours.
Just because I got a lot of stories, that don't mean they're interesting.
I mean, people love you, Jerry. People love the story. I get people who tweeted us or emails saying they're 50 years old. They didn't know what a podcast was until you started yours, and they're all about it. So I mean, people love the stories, and people love the the non-wrestling topics that we talk about, sometimes during the week.
Okay. If you say so.
Here's a wrestling question from Richard. This is from on Twitter, and he wants to know, we all know about your WrestleMania match against Michael Cole, and that's episode 2, if you want to listen back to Jerry's thoughts on his match. But any other WrestleManias that you were maybe in the works to wrestle at, previously, or any storylines that, didn't matriculate because before WrestleMania and you didn't get a chance to wrestle, back in the day?
Well, you know what? It's and when I think back on it, I don't know how or why. Like when I first got to the WWE in '93, it was just a short time after that because Randy Savage kind of jumped ship and went over to WCW, and I was kind of pressed into action. Vince asked me if I would help him out and do the commentary. Randy Savage and Vince McMahon were doing the commentary at the time, and just when they found out that Randy had left, Vince, he literally told me, he said, "King, if you'll help me just this one night, I'll have somebody else, as on a regular basis by next week." And that was like 24 years ago, and I've been doing it on a weekly basis ever since. And so it was just one of those things that because I was doing the commentary, just never really worked out to actually be in a match. And I can remember some of my favorite WrestleMania moments and all that sort of thing. And in calling matches, oh my gosh, there's so many great WrestleMania matches that I've got to call over the years. But as far as actually being in a match, it just finally worked out with the situation between Michael Cole and I, that they worked it into a match. And and still, of course, he and I were still both commentating, and but it just turned out that that little thing kind of caught fire, that rivalry, because it was sort of it was sort of a personal situation between the two of us. And then that, had it not been so personal, I don't think I would. I may not have ever had a WrestleMania match. So I'm glad that it did happen. And there's nothing like the feeling. In a sense, it's like I'm almost glad that. Excuse me. I'm almost glad that I did have that one WrestleMania match, because it really made me appreciate it more, and it meant so much. That having it that one time made it mean so much to me. I think I look around and I see, especially at WrestleMania time, all of these superstars had been in so many WrestleMania matches that it's not as special to them, even though we give it the huge build-up, and it is the grandest stage of them all and all of that sort of stuff. But there was just something special about the fact that I had it just, that one time, and it really made me appreciate it. And so, and there's certainly not any plans right now to have another one. I would love to have some sort of farewell match or something like that at a WrestleMania. That would be awesome. And the greatest thing of all about the WrestleMania match is the payday. Woo, man, it's amazing. I never realized how much money these guys are making at WrestleMania. It's unbelievable.
Another question just came in, and this is a question I've always been curious to ask you, but just never pop in my mind when I'm seeing you or hanging out with you. This is from Mike Leake, and this is from California, and he wants to know. He asked about your Goldust promo back in the day, your Attitude Era Goldust promo. Where you call him, well, we're not going to say it on the air, but
oh, please.
He wants to know, was there any backlash with you and Dusty and Goldust from that promo? And do you think someone could do that promo nowadays?
Well, I'll answer the last part of that question first. Absolutely not. No, you could not. I mean, the world has become so politically correct, and we now live in a world, we've talked about this before, that anything you say will offend somebody. I mean, I don't even care how nice you're trying to be. There's going to be somebody out there that is offended by it. And that goes not just for me, that goes for you, that goes for everybody. Everybody on TV, all the superstars on TV every week have to be so careful now that to me, it takes a lot of the fun out of what we do. Just the other night, or just this past weekend, I was talking to Booker T, and he said that, he has to really concentrate now when he's out there doing Raw for these few weeks for David Otunga, that he has to really concentrate on not letting anything slip that might even be slightly offensive. And I can't remember, he told me what it was, but he almost let something slip out the other day on one of the Raw shows. And he said, I just literally stopped in mid-sentence he said, it took me a couple of seconds to think of another word for what I was going to say. But then I finally came up with it. And that's just the way it is today. That's the way society is today. Everybody's going to be offended by something anybody says. And the difference today is with social media, with Twitter, everybody out there has got a voice now. Everybody that is on Twitter anything you say to the WWE, if you put at WWE in front of in your message, in your tweet, it's going to be read. It's going to be seen by somebody in the social media department of the WWE. So everybody has a voice now, and everybody can say, "Oh, I'm offended by this," and I can't believe that he said this or that sort of thing. And so, no, that kind of a comment could not be made in today's society, and especially in today's entertainment world. But that's one of the things when I go back and watch the Attitude Era, we had such leeway. We had such, it was just so pushing the envelope, so over the top that everybody got away with this, everything. And I think without a doubt there was a different target audience at that time, and there was the majority of our fans were a different age, and we were targeting the 18 to 34 crowd, the college students and that sort of thing, and so their brand of entertainment is different, or was certainly different. What they thought was entertaining is different from what, our target audience today would accept. So, yeah, and I know the interview, and there's another interview floating around on the internet of something that I said. I did an interview with Handsome Jimmy Valiant back in our Memphis days, back in the 80s. And there was, once again, you could say or do anything, and nobody would think anything about it. But yeah, times have changed, and we have to be very, very, very careful of what we say and do these days.
Was there any blowback between you, Dusty, or Goldust with that promo?
Oh no, not at all. No. Never. Nobody was ever offended by anything that anybody else said about it. I think the only time that anybody that I can remember got really upset with, for real, with things that I said. I thought at the time, and this was in 94 or whatever, I thought that Bret Hart was upset, genuinely upset about the things that I said about his parents when I made fun of Stu and Helen Hart. And but then, and I guess the reason I thought that was because the first time he put me in the sharpshooter, I thought he was going to break my back. So I said, this guy's for real mad about what I said about Stu and Helen. But in reality, later on, I didn't get a chance to be around or talk that much to Bret over the years. But as the years have gone by, I've had more of the opportunity to actually, hang out and talk with Bret sometimes. And that was one of the things I got to ask him. And he said, oh my gosh, no. He said they said, even my parents loved it. Stu and Helen both loved the fact that I included them into that rivalry so much. He said that my mom told me that Jerry Lawler's making stars out of us. They're putting us on TV every week, and he's talking about us every week. And everywhere they went, the people would come up to them and say, "Oh, well, what about what Lawler said about you?" and that sort of thing. So they really appreciated it, and he told me that she told him that they loved it. And so I was always happy about that. And because I was concerned that that maybe Bret had been upset over the years, but he said that he wasn't at all. The only other one that I thought really got mad about something I said was Taz, and it was just a little it was just a little comment that was made during the invasion, the ECW invasion, and when they first, Vince and I were sitting there doing the commentary. And, all of a sudden, here comes all the ECW guys, and we'd heard so much about them and all this stuff. And then when I saw Taz, Taz is, great wrestler and a great performer and the human suplex machine and all that sort of stuff. But he's not a very tall guy, right? I mean, he's like a little fire plug kind of guy. And so I don't know why I'm just things pop into my head. And I looked at Vince and I said, look at that Taz. This guy, he looked a lot bigger on the Lucky Charms box. And so anyway, apparently Taz was really offended by that because he was really seriously into that character in ECW at the time. And so, he kind of got offended. And I don't think he ever actually told me that he got offended. Maybe he didn't, but I just always felt that he did. And he and I sort of had not a strained relationship, but really just didn't really have any kind of much relationship, over the years. And I always felt that was one thing that I said that may have kind of hit home a little bit with the guy. But other than that, everybody always took, especially during the Attitude Era, everybody always took what was said with a grain of salt. I can remember doing an interview with, with Paul Bearer one time. And we talked about, and this stuff, when I go back, the cool thing about the network now, let me give you a plug for the WWE Network. The great thing about the WWE Network is nothing has been edited on the WWE Network. You can go back and watch all of this stuff, in the on-demand section of the WWE Network, and you can relive it right there the way it was in all its glory at the time it happened. But I did an interview one time with Paul Bearer when I guess the Undertaker had switched to over to being a good guy. And Kane came along, and he was explaining, how Kane came about. And oh my gosh, it was just so so over the top. I mean, we just, we talked about Paul Bearer talked about having sex with the Undertaker's mother. It was just, it was crazy.
You said here's Paul Bearer sticking his bologna.
Yeah, or sausage or something like that. Yeah, I think I said, I don't think we could say that here, but I think I said, are you telling me that you slipped your sausage to the Undertaker's mother? That may have to be edited out. I'm not sure. But anyway, that, some of the things that were said back then were just crazy.
It was, nuts. And that's what made it so genuine because, like, people do talk that way when they're just casually hanging out with buddies.
Yeah,
it's
of course they did.
It's the way people talk. And now, it just feels too scripted. It feels too robotic. Yeah. And these guys, and the women wrestlers too. It feels like, they can't say what any other person would say in that situation. They're saying off a script, and it's too robotic and sometimes not believable. All right, the check is here. Now, I paid last week, King. Now you got to pay up this week, right?
Are you kidding me? You think I have to pay for my own food here?
Yeah, you got. We get it for free then, right? We get it for free? No.
Well, I don't. What do you mean we? You got something in your pocket there? I said I get my food for free. Okay, I'm going to take care of it again this week.
This is going to end our question and answer episode, and I know there's a bunch of other questions, and we only have a limited amount of time per week to do this podcast.
You got to stop me from rambling on.
No, you're not rambling. If you think Jerry is rambling too much, let us know. Tweet at Jerry Lawler or Dinner with King, and let Jerry know. If you like the rambling, let him know too, because we love the stories.
We didn't even get to talk about the fact that Sirius Radio played one of my songs the other day. I can't believe it. Somebody sent me it reminded me when you said that about tweets. Somebody sent me a tweet that said, and they took a screenshot of their of their radio, and it said Outlaw Country, which is channel 60 on Sirius Radio, played the song, and it said Jerry the King Lawler. And the song was Trouble, the old Elvis Presley song that I recorded way, way back in the day. But, to know that they played that on Sirius Radio was kind of cool. That may make you cancel your subscription to Sirius Radio.
What are they playing?
Talk about that some. And you can do that. We can play some of my – I didn't even think about that on my podcast. We can play some of my some little clips of some of my songs that I've done over the years. I've done 2 albums and about 10 or 12 singles, and they weren't released. They all escaped. But anyway, they're out there.
We could play your sex-filled Wrestling with Girls.
Ooh, yes, Wrestling with Girls. Of course, my most famous one was Bad News, and we'll do an episode on that sometime.
Well, Wimp Busters.
Wimp Busters, that was good too, man. Jimmy,
that was a good one.
Great video with that. Yeah, that was.
Did you get a cease and desist from Ghostbusters?
No, they were happy with it.
All right, like I said, any questions you have, make sure to email us, dinnerwiththeking@powavenue.com, or tweet at Jerry or at dinnerwithking, and we'll make sure we'll answer all these questions in future episodes. And next week, we'll get back to our Andy Kaufman series. Right back to it on next week's Dinner with the King. Jerry, I got to run, buddy. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Don't run. Lay down and roll. You'll make better time.
Next week on Dinner with the King. The preceding show is a Pod Avenue production.